Task 2. Read the notes below and listen carefully to the recording. In the spaces provided, in block capitals, complete the information required with no more than 4 words. Gap 0 is given as an example. Answers must be based exclusively on the information in the recording. Now you have some time to read the information below.
I mean, she's really a model for female protagonists in the sense that she's funny, she's comfortable with herself, she's edgy, she's willing to challenge basically everyone around her, and she's strong. So I just didn't like the idea, and also didn't buy the idea that this one awful experience would then utterly turn her into such a puddle on the floor that she had to stop communicating with her devoted, beloved boyfriend, sabotaging herself and also really hurting him. You know, I don't mean to diminish the damage that can be done by being in a terrible situation like that, but it is one terrible moment in essentially a good life, and I just didn't believe it would have that impact on her.
Well, doesn't it come sort of after quite a while of just not being able to find work? Like, it's sort of the last resort. So she's rejected from jobs. I feel like she's fired from a job, and maybe I'm confusing her story with the Binze's in London.
No, you're right. She's at this low point, like Dan said, and I think also one of the things to point out is the novel does an amazing job of describing what it's like to be an immigrant who's sort of on the other side of legal work. She's using other people's papers. Obinze has to do the same thing in London, just trying to be a normal citizen and work and make it like everyone else can feel totally out of reach in this way that is incredibly hard to deal with.
Emily, I feel like there's something missing, though, from your description of what happens to her, which is that I didn't get the impression that the tennis coach encounter caused her to shut down. I got the impression that the tennis coach encounter was the last straw that caused her to sink into an actual clinical depression. Like, I think part of the point of this novel, and it's not one that Adichie really dwells on a lot, that there are several points during the novel where she really is, like, diagnosably clinically depressed. Like, right after that event, here's how the novel describes her. It's on page 192. She woke up torpid each morning, slowed by sadness, frightened by the endless stretch of day that lay ahead. Everything had thickened. She was swallowed, lost in a viscous haze, shrouded in a soup of nothingness. Between her and what she should feel, there was a gap. To me, I thought was one of the stronger parts of the book, because it's a very effective description of what depression feels like. And so I agree with you that's why it made me so mad when she got back to Nigeria.
Before we step away from this topic, though, I have to say that I think part of the reason I'm resisting your critique, Dan, is that Adichie nails the idea of the special white friend. This is an actual blog post in which she talks about white people who get it and how helpful they are and how you should thank them, basically. And I have to say, I read this and thought that I have been auditioning for this role my entire life. Like, to the point that before this podcast, I almost called a couple of Black friends of mine and read this to them and asked them if they thought I qualified. Then that seemed too pathetic to do, so I didn't. But, I think there is this way in which the most powerful social commentary in the book, even if she is hitting it on the nose at times a little too much, she really does have something to say about the relations of, obviously Black people and white people, but also how Black immigrants are treated differently. The narrative arc for the book is largely set in a hair salon where there are all these African immigrants from different countries who are judging each other. All of those gradations are laid out with a lot of acute observation, and that is no small feat, even if it's not always rising to the level of, high realism in terms of literature.
Yeah, I agree. And I really liked those scenes, and I really liked what I thought was a very deft structural choice that she made, which was to begin with this notion of braiding and then to essentially create a braided novel, right? That's in which a number of stories are twirling around each other endlessly until they come together at the end. That's a great formalist choice for a novelist to make, and she really pulls that off. I feel like this could very easily have been a novel that felt messy because it's bouncing back and forth between different time spans and not necessarily in any particularly orderly fashion, but it never did. And I never felt like she was out of control of her material. Even if it sometimes got bigger or longer than I thought it necessarily needed to be, I always felt like it was going somewhere. And I really appreciated that about this book. It's a talent that many novelists don't have at all.
And also, I don't know about you, I was turning the pages. I mean, there were maybe a couple of subsections where I got slightly impatient, but mostly I was really hooked once I got into the book.